guys, Rachel here from The Confused Millennial. Today, I'm really excited to have Dani Pascarella from InVibe.com. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
So why don't you start off by kind of sharing with everyone what Invibed is, and kind of how you make a living and this kind of entrepreneurial journey you're on now.
Yeah, absolutely. So at InVibe, we're creating the go-to destination where any millennial who wants to get a handle on their finances and like really take control of their financial situation can go and do that. We're an online website. We have an app as well. But we basically have print articles. We have a lot of video stuff made for mobile, a lot of expert tips and advice. So really, the way that started was we're looking around and all of the financial advice out there was aimed for really like retirees or like a much older generation. And I'm like, wait, there's nothing for like us millennials. What the heck? Why and how it was founded.
As you were saying that, I started laughing to myself because you guys just posted an article about 5 festival outfits for under $55, and I was like, yes, this is what
Yes,
millennials want to read. They want to know.
exactly. Like no other media outlets are doing anything like that millennials actually care about. So we're like, let's take all the expertise and we'll make it super relatable to millennials. So it's stuff we can actually like use and benefit from rather than, another boring finance article that about something that probably won't affect me for another, I don't know, like 20 years.
So true. So true. You actually just made the transition from your 9 to 5 to doing Imbibe full time. So,
Mhm.
what was that kind of process like? How did you decide, like, okay, this is the point where I'm good to go full steam on this?
Yeah, so it was actually much longer than just now. I worked in finance before actually founding InVibe, and I knew I wanted to start it. And financial firms are not cool with letting you write about finance on the side. So I had to leave like a very nice salary. I was working for like a top bank, like doing really well. And I had to leave that behind to be able to create InVibe.com. Now,
That's
con-
so, sorry, that's so
Go ahead.
interesting. I didn't realize that they were that strict about it.
Yeah, especially if they're a bigger firm, they're very, very strict. So I had
Wow.
to leave to start, just even when it was an idea to move it forward, I had to quit like without any kind of real proof that it would be successful. So that took like a massive leap of faith.
That's
Uh,
actually a really important point. If you're listening to this and thinking about starting a business, check your company laws and bylaws and handbook and things like that. Because at some companies, if you do start working on a side hustle or a business of your own while working for them, sometimes they can't actually take ownership of that. Not in all situations, but my fiance also, when he was launching his business, he was going to work for another company and he had to check that law to see, well, are they going to be able to take ownership of this? So sorry, that was just a side note tangent. If you
no,
are
that's
thinking about launching a business, do it Danny's way and think it through.
Yeah, no, that's such a great point. Or they could just fire you, and then
Hmm.
that's not good either. And that was
Yes.
horrible on your record. So just make sure, yeah, check your employment agreement. And so I ended up leaving to found InVibe. And it was a huge leap of faith. I think I tried to quit 6 months before I actually did quit. And my boss said, "Oh no, go home, think about it for the weekend." And like I chickened out. So I worked for like another 6 months before I actually took the leap, which was, which was, it can be scary. It really can.
Hmm.
And it's something that if you want it, it gets to the point where you can't not do it. So that's why I took the leap. I thought about myself, when I'm 90 and I'm like old grandma status and I'm looking back at my life, like, do I want to say I worked in this corporate job forever?
Hmm.
Or do I want to take a leap and like try something that I'm really passionate about?
Hmm.
And
I
then the
love
more I
that.
thought about it, like I was doing really well in that finance job. So if everything went, kaput, I knew I'd always like be able to get a job in finance. So that's another thing I think a lot of people don't consider. It's very easy once you have experience to try something, and then if it doesn't work, you can always go back to what you were doing before.
I
Um,
love that. Even with starting my own business, one thing I always tell people, because they'll ask me, how did you get through that fear to make that leap and things like that? I always relied on the fact that I could go back to, if not necessarily go back to my full time career that I have my degree in, I could go
mhm.
back to waitressing to make money.
Yeah.
And having that safety net, like you talked about, I think is really important because I forget what the exact statistic is, but somewhere upwards of like 80% of businesses fail in their first year. So
Hmm.
that's a good safety net that I'm happy you kind of brought up there. But continue, keep going. I love this.
Yeah, exactly. and I'm super risk averse. So I was like, I can't, I had a big chunk of savings
Hmm.
to produce InVibe. But, starting a business costs money and it always
Hmm.
costs a lot more and takes a lot longer than you think it's going to. It's kind of a rule. It's going to cost 3 times as much and take 3 times as long or than what you originally thought.
Hmm.
So me being the risk averse person that I am, I found a job that actually it was a full-time business development job. It
Hmm.
paid a fraction, like literally like less than half of what I was making before, but it was income and it was flexible enough
Hmm.
where I could work from home and pick my hours and like spend enough time on InVibe where it would work and still have an income. And their
Hmm.
employment contract, I talked to them and they were totally cool with me running this business. And the best part is I really kind of spent the time to select this, but
Hmm.
they were helping all the media companies, 80% of the top publishers in the US, build and monetize their online audiences. So it was almost like I was getting paid
Awesome.
to learn about what I was trying to build, and they had
Hmm.
no qualms with me starting a business on the side. So it was, kind of the perfect situation. So you don't have to jump off the cliff if you're trying to start a company. You can slowly like, like descend down the mountain with like little
Hmm.
baby steps, and it's totally fine. And you've got to do it at your own pace and with what makes you comfortable. Um,
Totally.
so that brings us to today. When I when I left, April 1st was my last day at that company. They were wonderful, but it was really time for me to Imbibe was at a critical point where they needed me full time in order to actually move the business forward.
It's awesome. So, was there kind of like a revenue point that you guys were having where you be able to offer yourself a salary? Like, what was that kind of critical point besides them needing your manpower? How did you give up your income? Kind of that's I think a lot of the questions I typically get a lot. Well, okay, you've lived off of savings, you've used savings to build this. Where at what point do you feel comfortable taking that risk?
Mhm. Yeah, so I think savings is huge. So I have enough cushion for several months to be able to move forward with
Hmm.
this and not have to work.
Hmm.
But even so, again, I said I'm risk averse. So I'm doing like some consulting on the side for other
Hmm.
startups where I get paid. Like, I think it's important to know that no matter what situation you get into, you need to have the hustle and believe in yourself where like, I can always find a way to make money. And I think once you have that belief, then it's much easier. And then also, even with your living expenses, like I know, like I was spending a lot of money on food when I worked on Wall Street, but I
Hmm.
know I could curb it down to like $5 a day if I needed to.
Hmm.
So just like understanding like what you actually need to be happy is really important too.
I
Uh,
love that. I absolutely love that because I think a lot of times people, when they get those Wall Street jobs, they kind of also have lifestyle inflation with those salaries
exactly,
that go with it. And so I like the awareness to be able to say, okay, like we're cutting that out now. I'm not working down there
exactly.
every day. And that takes humbleness and that takes, and so it's a great quality to have to say like I was doing this, but now I'm going to do this and it's my choice and there's nothing wrong with that.
Totally. They call it like the Elon Musk diet because he did it when he was a young kid. And that's why part of why he's like, I can be successful. I think he did it on like $1 a day or something. So
Wow.
now people are like, they do that because once you know, okay, I can live off of like nothing and I love what I'm doing so much and I'm happy, then suddenly like not having that massive income doesn't seem so scary. And I'm in New York City, so like you do need money to live, but definitely a teeny tiny fraction of what I used to spend like when I was in finance.
That's awesome. So, is Imbibed your first kind of venture into entrepreneurship, or when did you get bit by that bug?
So I started in college. I started
Hmm.
actually a club promoting company that did events and things. Bombed miserably, like it was not a really great learning experience. But it was not going to be like the next Facebook. And not that it bombed, but it wasn't a massive success. It's like we made some money. It was a cool thing to do for a
Hmm.
while, but like the passion wasn't there to like continue on and like keep it going. But
Hmm.
it was a really good learning experience. Then I went on to be president of the entrepreneurship club. So I guess like that kind of catapulted me into that community of entrepreneurs.
Hmm.
But I thought it was important to really, rather than go to a startup out of school and undergrad, I really want to go work for a top company because I think it's very important if you're ever going to start a business to see how the industry leaders operate
Hmm.
and to see how they run. Because if you know you can be successful in that environment, you can be a top player there, then no problem. Go start your own company. You know what the best competition is and you know you can beat it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's really important to know. Not beating the company as a whole, but you have an understanding of
Mm-hmm.
where you can add value, what your strengths are, and just the learning experience of seeing what industry leaders are doing will really impact how you form and operate your company.
It's so, so, so true. I talk to a lot of young adults, I guess you would say. They're college students still. They're still getting their bachelor's degrees and things like that. And they want to, make their blog their full-time business, or they have this idea for some sort of product they want to make their full-time business. And it's a really great idea, but to go straight from college and then into the entrepreneurial world or working for startups, you almost sometimes can fall into this lack of knowledge or what the next step in the path should be because you
Hmm.
haven't worked in an organization, you haven't worked in a team, you haven't seen that
Exactly.
daily grind. And so I think it's a really important point that although your parents might be nagging you and you don't want to do it, sometimes there's a big payoff for yourself to go
Hmm.
ahead and do it.
Yeah, like don't reinvent the wheel. Learn what you want to learn
Hmm.
from either a job or mentors or other people. Because it is, I promise you, it is so much easier when you learn from others rather than just try to do it all yourself.
Yeah, and you bring up a really important point, which is when you go into the workforce and you get those years of experience under your belt, you do develop relationships with mentors or other people that when you do go ahead and start your own thing full time, you can
Hmm.
tap those people. You can learn what worked, what didn't work, and learn from their mistakes, which is also kind of the inspiring millennial series, what we hope it will become for some people that are listening.
Yeah.
So, on that point, what have been some of the mistakes and challenges that you've faced?
Oof, how long is this podcast? Mistakes and challenges. All right. So, I mean, a lot. I think
Hmm.
going into this, if you're not failing, you're not learning and you're
Ooh, I
not
love
growing.
that. Love
So
it.
you go into this knowing like I am going to make mistakes. It's
Hmm.
not about that. It's how quickly can you catch the mistake and correct your course.
Love that.
And being able to be nimble and kind of roll with the punches. That's all what being an entrepreneur is about.
Hmm.
Things are going to go wrong. It's going to happen pretty much every day. And you
Hmm.
just have to be able to handle that and be able to fix the situation.
Hmm.
But I think the mistakes I grossly underestimated, I think, when we started, how important HR was.
Hmm.
I think in corporate land, a lot of people tend to say like, "Oh, it's just HR," and kind of brush it off.
Hmm.
But in a startup or really in any company, the people you bring on board are that's what's going to make or break the company. And it is
Hmm.
so important to be able to read people and like understand who will work well with your culture.
Hmm.
We're in this like day and age now where everybody thinks being an entrepreneur is so cool. Like when I was in college, like nobody thought it was cool. I remember
Yeah.
my first entrepreneurship club meeting, like we started the club because nobody cared until
Hmm.
then. And there were like five people. And now
Hmm.
I get a lot of like applications or people that are like, I want to work for you. And they
Hmm.
realize how much work it is. And then they're like, oh, never mind. So
Right.
I instituted like a 90-day, like, try this out period. And that's
Hmm.
kind of how I test people. And if they're still as hungry and like go getter about it after
Hmm.
that time, then there's somebody who can come on and work with our team for good. But I
Hmm.
mean, that's a good weed out process. But I think,
That
yeah, at first
is.
I didn't do that. So I'd get a lot of people who would be really great for
Hmm.
like a month and then they'd fizzle and it kept happening.
Hmm.
And it's just people don't realize how much work it is until they're really in it.
It's funny. I don't know if you follow Chelsea Gross at all, but she's kind of, I feel like, the media voice of the millennial generation, having
Yeah, yeah.
started. Yeah, oh yeah, you're from Boca also, so we're all from South Florida. But yeah, woohoo. But so she really kind of tries to brand the millennial generation as the entrepreneurial generation, and I
Hmm.
think there's a lot of truth to that. And I think it sounds really sexy because we are the generation that grew up watching Napster and Facebook be built in dorm rooms
Hmm.
and but I think that what we see being put out there online with, an Instagram photo going viral or a Snapchat going viral, and then these guys are
Yeah.
on Ellen, there's a lot more to building that sustainable brand
Yeah.
than what we watched from the outside. So it's good that we have these entrepreneurial spirits, but I love the fact that, like, it's really, 90 days. Are you still interested in this project?
Hmm.
I think it's so important because with the Inspiring Millennial series, we're talking to multi passionate millennials, really. And I think it's hard when we are so multi-passionate as a generation to stick with something for even 90 days.
Hmm.
And so has that been kind of your experience? Has it always been finance, or were there other types of things that may have been swaying your focus over the years?
So I've always had a lot of different interests,
Hmm.
but for me, I think it's a combination of what are you really like, what do you love and what you're good at, which is like that's for me that's a lot of things. Like I love to dance, but
Hmm.
and I have a lot of hobbies that I could easily like be like this could be a business. But I
Hmm.
think it's also partially it's not about you when you start a business. You start a business because you need to be solving a problem that a group of people have. So
Hmm.
as much as I love to dance, like I don't know what problems dancers have that I would solve. Like the world doesn't need me starting a
Hmm.
dance business because I just don't have any, I don't have anything to offer them that's going to help them at this time. Maybe I'll come up with a great idea in like a year, but right now, no.
Hmm.
But so for me, for finance, because I've worked in it since I was 20. I got like my securities license and stuff. I love the industry,
Hmm.
and I knew that millennials were struggling. I went to my multimillionaire, billionaire clients, and they were doing great. And then I saw my peers on the other end, like right after '08, like doing unpaid internships after they had 50 grand plus in debt from college. And I'm like, this is so unfair and somebody needs to step in and fix it. So it's that balance of I love this and the world needs this that you have to think about when you start a business, not just I think this is really cool, so I'm going to do it.
Hmm.
That's a hobby. That's not a business.
It's a super duper true point. Sorry, I just said super duper.
That's that's in my vocab too. It's all good.
No, it's a really awesome point. And also kind of like it leads me to say like what should the millennial listeners be doing with their money and things like that? How do you tackle paying off that student debt? I think that's one of the biggest problems right now for our generation in finance.
Yeah. So that's actually why I left my full-time job now. So I'll give you guys a sneak peek. This isn't really
Yay!
that public yet, but you're listening, so you get it. Yay. So we actually started as a media site and we did
Hmm.
really well. And we actually surveyed our audience.
Hmm.
And we found out we had all these really people that like subscribed to us and loved us and were like taking our survey, were super high earners, really successful, like graduated from college, were killing it in their careers. And their finances were just the polar opposite.
Hmm.
Like I think like 61% of them were not investing at all.
Hmm.
But they're in like the top 10% of millennial earners. So there's this big gap. So the reason I left my job just now was to create a product that you can actually outsource all this to us. So we're building technology and we basically take a look at all of your finances, give you a plan, revamp everything. And then we make sure you follow it by sending you content to enforce your behavior. So that's like the next thing that we're rolling out. We're testing it with a group now,
Yay!
but it's meant to be something that's super affordable. Anybody can do this or have this, and we just basically do everything for you, so you can
Awesome.
continue crushing it in your job, and your finances will be taken care of. So that's the next thing that we're building out, and that's why I had the belief enough to quit because we
Hmm.
had a wait list for this when I quit. So I was like, okay, we have a wait
Awesome.
list of people who want to pay for this, then I feel comfortable, leaving because, we've already gotten to this
Hmm.
point where we have an audience, we've got a ton of people that are willing to pay, like
Hmm.
let's time to quit the job.
Awesome.
But again, that took a full year to get to that point of me doing double duty, working two jobs, and like that's a very hard thing for anyone to do as well.
So, yeah, I mean, that's extremely difficult. How many hours a week would you say you were putting into working both of these jobs?
Oh gosh, I don't think I ever stopped,
Let
to
me
be
make this
honest.
easier. Did you have a social life?
No. My friends were like, "What happened to you?" Um, yeah, you
Yeah.
have to make sacrifices. That's why I say before you go like chase the entrepreneurial dream and you like really
Hmm.
commit, you have to make sure you want it so badly that you can't picture yourself doing anything else. Like it pains you to not be doing that thing that you want to start
Hmm.
because it is going to be hard. Like you're going to have to go from a full day at work to go home and work for like 5 more hours. And you're going to have to do that every day. And
Hmm.
if you don't have passion and you're not like obsessed with what you're doing,
Mm-hmm.
it's gonna fizzle. It is, and that's why I think most businesses fail. I don't think it's like a lack of, I think it's mostly a lack of passion.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I've noticed. Of the entrepreneurs I know, the ones that have been, I love this, I care about it so much, they're still going. Like
Mm-hmm.
they haven't, I know I have a lot of friends that left corporate jobs, and the ones that are so obsessed with what they're doing are all still successful. The ones that have fizzled were the ones that are like, oh, it sounds cool. I kind of want to do it. And we're like a little wishy washy about it. So I think the X factor, the differentiator is just being so passionate about it that you cannot quit.
I have so many thoughts going through my head right now that's like literally ping pong balls because everything you're
Yes.
saying is so true. Because we were introduced through Mr. and Mrs. Adventure, who were our first guests on this vlog series, Brittany
Oh,
and
yeah, I
Drew.
met them.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I mean they literally live their travel blog 24/7 in a van right now. Like they do not
Yeah.
get a break.
Yeah.
We're doing this right now on a Sunday. Like there is no break. You do not. I think even if you are an entrepreneur like me where I got fired twice in under a month, and so I was like, you know what? I'm actually going to listen to my gut, which has been telling me to start my own business for the last year,
Hmm.
but I've been too scared. Like clearly the pain is so bad that like I can't even hold a job anymore.
Yes, that's it.
And so, I didn't do the baby steps like you did, but I love that because I think it's, my fiance did it like that when he was first starting, and he also
Hmm.
has a financially based company, which you and I have talked about. But I just kind of had to get thrown into it,
Yeah.
and like you, living off of savings, and it started out pretty wishy-washy, or I would be really passionate and like fully go gung-ho on one project, and then I'd start making money from that and I'd become kind of stagnant, where it got to this point where when I was doing my rebrand and I was struggling with all of the different passions I had, the whole reason this got labeled as multi-passionate millennial was because that's what I was struggling with, and a lot of my ideas were fizzling out because I couldn't figure
Mhm.
out which one to focus solely on.
Yeah.
And I think that that's so important because if you're doing it because you want flexibility and freedom to sit on a beach every day, like you'll sit on a beach every day and you won't have a business. And that's just
That's
the
it.
reality of it. But you have to want to do it 24/7 because that's really what ends up happening. Uh,
Yeah.
and so I love that. You
But
know,
the thing is, if it's what you really love, it doesn't seem like work. Like I get excited.
exactly.
Like I stayed even on like I'll tell you about my Friday night if you want to get really into it. I stayed up till 7 a.m. because I was like because I was in the middle of creating a big part of our new software, and I was like on such a roll. I'm like, I can't go to bed. I can't believe I'm creating this.
Hmm.
This is so cool. And like I just adrenaline took me to 7 a.m. and I'm like, oh crap,
Amazing.
it's light outside. Um, but like that's what it's like. It doesn't when you love what you're doing, it
Mhm.
doesn't feel like work. You're gonna definitely work more hours, but it's gonna be like a fun thing for you most of the time.
It's so true. I remember one of the first ever like live chats or interviews I did, they asked me like, "Oh, well, what does it feel like what do you do for fun?" And I was like, I actually research the stuff that we're talking about. Like that's
Yeah.
my fun, because it really becomes kind of an extension of you and what you like to do.
Mhm.
I absolutely love the fact that you guys took this from a media company and are now adding in these products and courses to continue to provide that solution in just such a bigger
Yeah.
level and a more meaningful level because it's so valuable the solution that you're giving your community of millennials, and I
Oh,
love
thank you.
it.
Yeah, it all comes back to solving that problem.
Hmm.
If we have to pivot if we're not solving the problem we set out to solve. So,
Hmm.
yeah, so really excited about the new stuff we're building out for sure.
It's awesome. I guess one question I kind of have to ask you
Hmm.
is, do you feel like an adult yet?
I don't think I ever will feel like an adult.
Oh.
No. Adult is like I feel like it's like a unicorn or like something that never actually happens. I really do. And I think it's a generational thing. If you
Hmm.
like, we just do everything 10 years later than our parents did because it's like
Hmm.
we have college. A lot of people go now.
Yeah.
You then have student debt. So like weddings are more expensive than they've ever been.
Planning one now. I know, congratulations, you
Yeah.
just got
Oh,
married.
thank you. Yeah, but like that's a big setback. The
Yeah.
average price of a wedding in our country is like I think it's like 35 grand or
Yep.
something. In New York, it's like almost 100,000.
Yep.
In New York City, like it's crazy. Our parents didn't have those expenses. Like my parents went to the church down the street,
Hmm.
had a backyard reception, and like that's it. It was like pretty much free. So we have all these additional expenses now between
Hmm.
school, weddings. Most good jobs are in urban areas for a lot of
Hmm.
people at big companies. So you have to live an expensive lifestyle.
Hmm.
So we're just 10 years behind every other, our parents' generation, I think.
I love that being able to, I mean, I love that idea of like, there are so many more milestones and more debt factors that are happening to our generation in our 20s, where 20s are no longer, I mean, there's a TED talk out there about how 30 is not the new 20. And physically and scientifically our brain it's not, but in the actual world in real life those
Hmm.
milestones are really setting us back
Yeah.
before we feel comfortable starting families and so many other things for a
Mhm.
lot of people, obviously not for everybody. So I love that. I think I've asked so many people and of everybody I've talked to, you're definitely one of the ones that I look at as more adult, for lack of a better word, but you're
tell my tell my parents that, please. Please tell my parents that.
well, and I say that because you are, around my, how old are you?
I'm 28.
You're 28. So, you're 28, you're married, you've worked at a big, huge company in New York City. You're starting this company that, in such a real way, in such a sustainable way, in a way that's going to have such longevity. It's not kind of like, starting to promote clubs in your 20s that you have.
Which I did do though.
But it's and it's really cool to be able to start seeing all of these different things and to be like, no, I don't feel like an adult, because I think so. I mean, I sometimes am like, is there something wrong with me that I don't feel more adult like yet? At what point does running a business feel like not I'm not having fun or not summer camp? And I think that's actually a great thing because you also experience that.
I honestly like I saw a sign the other day. It was like "Don't grow up as a trap," and I'm like, I kind of agree with this because the disposition I have now, like the freedom to do what I want and like
Mhm.
be able to make career moves or do
Mhm.
things, like I would like that forever. Like I feel like
Mhm.
adulthood when I think of that, I think like you're locked into like this corporate
Yes.
job and like you have the same routine every day and it's just really boring. And I just feel like whether I'm married or I have a dog now, whether I have kids, like I don't ever want my life to be like, boring in a sense. Like I
Mhm.
would love to just be a kind of a kid forever, but a responsible kid. A kid that runs a company.
I love that. I love that. Brittany and Drew said something very similar.
Yeah.
I love it because, yes, we're taking on responsibilities and things like that, but it's about not losing that passion and that vigor for life. And that translates into your business, which I'm super excited to see what Invite continues to do, and what you continue to do. And so, how can people find you kind of after this? What's the social media? Where
Yeah.
are you?
Find us. We're super social. We're always on there. Invived.com is
Hmm.
our website. And there's right on the homepage, you can sign up for our weekly email blast where we talk about money and all the pop culture around money in a funny way. Like, Kim Kardashian's best friend's school for rich kids that's opening up in the Upper East Side, where you learn about diamonds and caviar 101. Yes, those are real classes. So like it's like the ridiculous stuff with money that happens, but also some useful stuff like the stock market and like what you should be doing. And then we're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. So yeah, find us. We follow back. We love to talk to you guys. And if you have any specific questions, like just email me, Danny@invibe.com. I love to talk to millennials who are awesome all the time.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Danny. It was such a pleasure getting to have you today.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me. This is great.